We're in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Nichole Barnes-Marshall. She's the Global Head of Inclusion and Diversity at Pinterest. Nichole, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Nichole Barnes-Marshall. My pronouns are she, her. And what did I want to be when I grow? How did I answer the question? What did I want to be when I grow up? Well, I have always had a passion for making a difference in the world and contributing back to the communities that help to shape me and into who I am. So I recall very early on wanting to be the second Black mayor of Chicago after Mayor Harold Washington. So of course that I didn't make it to that, but I would say that the work that I do in diversity and inclusion really did get me to the goal of wanting to be the second Black mayor, which is to contribute back to the Chicago, to my hometown, to the city I love, as well as support communities in need and really just be a resource to help people to live better lives. So I feel I get a chance to do that in my current line of work as well.
I love that. I always think it's interesting to reflect back and see where we thought we'd be 10, 20 years from now as well. And I definitely love your answer in terms of really making a difference and giving back to the community, specifically in Chicago as well. When you think about your personal journey, how has that really led you to be in kind of global inclusion and diversity, and specifically at Pinterest?
Yeah. Well, my career journey has taken some interesting twists and turns, and I started off actually as a recruiter in technology, so a tech recruiter in essence, a long time ago, probably well before you were born, back in the 90s, and I would often find myself either the only woman or only person of color on those recruiting teams. So I, just really started to unintentionally carve out my path towards diversity and inclusion just by virtue of recruiting. And it wasn't until I met my first director of diversity about 22 years ago, who said, "Hey, how are you able to find all of this diverse talent?" And I said, "Well, usually I'm the only one, and when I go to these events, I attract a lot of diversity, and I build relationships, and I've been able to, kind of take people from one job or one contract that I'd work on to the next, just on the basis of those relationships." So that opened the door for me to step into a newly created diversity recruiter role, which I was instantly hooked, and from there went on to do diversity program management, managing employee resource groups, and then into more, program management across the full suite of DEI, and then into the lead role. So I say all the time, this work is not my occupation, it is my occupation. So diversity kind of found me, but then once it found me, I was hooked, and I've been in ever since.
Occupassion. I am going to borrow that from time to time now.
Sure. Please do. Just cite your source. That's all.
Yes, absolutely. Citing my source, and fast forward, you have 22 plus years of experience really in this space as well, and carving out kind of these resources. And I find in these conversations, especially with employee resource group leaders, as a former ARG leader, I know it's about resourcing and thinking about how you can really communicate kind of your needs to the organization, and how the company can really demonstrate that as well. Can you tell me about what a company needs to do in order to show their really full commitment in achieving real or authentic diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, perhaps organizational structure and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think first of all, it's just really important to walk the talk. I think every company out there has a statement or commitment to having a diverse workforce and an inclusive culture, and really, communicate all of that through their values. And I think all of that is critical and important. And it's also just as important to have to back it up with the real work that supports it, the resources to really drive it, and the accountability to ensure it's sustained and continuing to grow and evolve as the company grows and evolve. Also, inclusion and diversity has to be fully embedded throughout the organization, through the people and talent strategies, through the business strategies, how we make decisions, how we think, how we behave, and to the degree that it gets embedded in the culture, will be, in my opinion and my experience, the degree in which the company really moves forward affirmatively on their DEI journey. And with that kind of focus, then it's not a box to check, it's dots to connect. I think especially now, just a couple of years after the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent social uprising, and the focus that many companies now brought to the need, that being more aware of the need for a focus on diversity and inclusion. I think it's clear that organizations have to be really intentional and hold themselves accountable to really bringing those goals and commitments to life, so that our employees truly have the experience of being valued and seen and heard. And through all of that, it yields outstanding results for the business as well as for people. So you don't lose from this, but I think there's often just this disconnect between the talk and the walk. And with that walk has to come a real sense of accountability, of transparency, and that integrated view that truly makes it a part of the culture.
Yeah, you definitely need to have teeth and action to support the statements and the words you say as well, and show your full commitment. And people are holding organizations and leaders accountable as well. And it's become an expectation to really understand, hear, and listen to your employees, to your team members in a pretty active way as well. One study found that 47% of employees reported that their stress was higher than anything they'd previously experienced in their career, and only 37% agreed that their organization really understood what they needed, both in their personal lives and for their families as well. So outside of their day-to-day job or career. Bringing it back to Pinterest, how are you and the team really showing up for the full lives of employees?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked that question, because it is very, very real for people right now. Our daily lives have changed dramatically, and I have a friend who says all the time, we are not walking job descriptions, and it's not always possible nor realistic to think that you cut off your personal life once your work life starts. Of course, the cicadas come by right now. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Okay, so it's just impossible to expect that you could just flip the switch and turn it off. So I think it's of critical importance for all businesses to really look at the whole employee, and I'm so proud to be a part of Pinterest, where we really are bringing that focus. And one of the, I think, most critical ways that we're doing that is with the implementation of Pinflex, which is a new model that we rolled out earlier this year that, really focuses on, promoting that flexibility and, while prioritizing, those in-person moments, those times where we need to come together to celebrate our culture and get critical work done. And so, that shows up like, you can work from anywhere in the United States. And, that shows up like parental leave and with a minimum of 22 weeks of parental leave. And gosh, I wish I had that 16 years ago when I started having my children. So, to have that opportunity to really bond with your children and know that your job and your career is protected is just a very meaningful thing. And that shows up in so many other ways. Unlimited PTO, and as a part of the work from anywhere, 3 months of the year, you can work from most places around the globe, as well as the regular work from anywhere in the US. There's so many things. I really think I could rattle it off for another good 15 minutes, but I would just say, we've taken a real comprehensive approach to work-life balance, and we know that there'll be some times where that balance will, it will show up a little more on life and a little more on work, and that the two, just as right now as I'm working from home, flow right in together simultaneously. So the ability to have that flexibility, the ability to have so many different options to manage all of your personal needs while continuing to support the growth of the business is, I think, so critical. And I think it contributes to why we're able to, have some of the best talent in tech, because we provide an environment where you can really fully bring your whole self into it.
Yeah, I think those examples around flexibility and really operationalizing that and setting that standard is really important for employees, for working parents, for caregivers, and for everybody at the organization as well, to have that and thinking about balance and work-life blend. When we're thinking about these strategies and Pinterest as an organization, what is your unique role in leading the global inclusion and diversity team at Pinterest, and what is it clearly not? We know that Nichole cannot be in all of the rooms, all of the meetings, and that's not the goal, right? But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I see myself as the subject matter expert and an advisor and practitioner of inclusion and diversity, as well as a leader, a business leader at Pinterest. So I have a specific responsibility as well as a general responsibility as a leader. But ultimately, the responsibility of inclusion and diversity at Pinterest is everyone's, all employees. I would say the buck really stops with the CEO and the board in terms of the responsibility of the organization, and certainly our executive team and helping to provide that clear leadership and support and engagement. And then my role as with the team as subject matter experts, we help the business articulate how to do that. What does good look like? What are some of the ways in which we can ensure we have a representative workforce that reflects our pinners, and an inclusive environment that, brings the best out of everyone. And we help to, integrate that and enable the business to fully leverage all of these resources for our collective advantage. So, while we certainly have my role and the role of the team is likely the most visible role as it relates to inclusion and diversity, but ultimately the responsibility really does sit with everyone, the leaders, every employee in terms of the inclusive behaviors that we reflect in the workplace, and the decisions and the connections that we make, and how we shape the pinners' experiences on the platform, that they're inclusive. So often it is easy to kind of point the finger at, oh, we have a chief diversity officer and we have an IND team, so we can check that box. But just like I said earlier, it's really more dots to connect. How do we use the skills and expertise that we have to help enable all of our employees and all of our leaders to really live it and bring it through in their work every day.
Absolutely. Enabling and empowering folks to really create an environment where people can thrive, where they feel like they can bring themselves to work and really have these conversations as well. I think every organization and person is on their own kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion journey too. And part of that is really having hard conversations where you don't necessarily have all the answers, and that is okay as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about your inclusion talks, which I believe are called inclusion talks, and what the goals are in setting this space up? If you could share an example for folks who are listening about a topic that is talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it. It is, these conversations are not always easy, but they're important and needed and necessary. And we have to lean into the discomfort of those conversations for us to come out on the other side as a more connected and an inclusive organization. And one of the ways that we try to create that is through our actually their conclusion discussions, just adding a few more syllables in there for you. and in these discussions, we really want to create that open forum for our employees to come together and just have some really safe and yet courageous conversations about what's happening in our world, and how that impacts the way that we show up at work, and how we can support each other through it. And it's so important, because when things happen in the world, it's, as I said earlier, it's easy to compartmentalize or try to suppress it. But through these discussions, we really just want to open it up and create the safe space for that to take place. And so I think a good example of that was just earlier this summer, or at the start of the summer, I believe, when the mass shooting in Buffalo took place. And there was just a lot of anguish from across the board, but most felt by our Black employees. And so it happened around the time that we were planning a conclusion discussion. And so when we had that discussion, we really just talked about it. We talked about the impact of it, and how that left so many employees feeling about their safety and their space in this world. And while it happened in Buffalo, but it raises concerns and questions of that this can happen anywhere. And as we've seen, it has happened in so many other places, and not just to kind of lament on the trauma of the event, but to also just open it up, and to have this, particularly for those who are not directly impacted by those events, to actually connect and understand how their fellow peers and colleagues are feeling about it. And that helps to bring greater empathy, greater understanding, and ultimately greater allyship. So that as leaders and employees within the company, there's just now a greater level of empathy that they will have towards their direct peers and employees, because of that knowledge and awareness and ability to have a discussion about it, versus just hearing the sensational headlines and moving on to the next thing. So we just really want to be able to create that that space where, you know, we can be better and just really show up meaningfully for each other.
Yeah, showing up meaningfully for each other. And thank you for sharing that example. I think that is really important in terms of creating that understanding, empathy, storytelling, and creating a space where people can feel courageous and brave and share, and in a place where it's with your colleagues who you work with as well. How do
Mm-hmm.
you train leaders on your team to really lead these inclusion discussions?
Yeah, well, you know, well, there's a couple of things there. You mentioned train. That's a sensitive word for me, only because I firmly believe that, you know, you train an animal, you educate a human, and often we talk about DEI as in the work that we do as training, which really gets to a very specific skill versus the education, that full range of learning and discovery and exploration and self-reflection that has to happen for, you know, for these, you know, these concepts to really come to life for a person. So I can't sit in a room and say, here are the 10 things you should do to become a facilitator of a conclusion talk, conclusion discussion. It starts first with having some conversation around self-reflection. You know, what are your thoughts? What are your beliefs? You know, about this topic, or just in general about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What have you struggled with the most around these topics? There has to be that opportunity to fully become aware, interact with, and also interrogate any assumptions that may already be there that you know, can be laying dormant and unconscious and then end up coming out in one of these talks. So that self-reflection is really, really, really important. And then I also ask for honesty and transparency. And in these conversations about these, you know, thorny topics around DEI, it's not always easy to be honest and transparent. There's a greater inclination to want to try to say the right things instead of saying what's really true for the individual. And so finding and that self-reflection and that conversation and really understanding what are their thoughts, their beliefs, and how can you articulate them in a way that it helps to move the conversation forward. And even to share where you struggled and where you've realized that maybe some of the thoughts and beliefs that you have no longer apply. Those are the best ways to help people learn and to connect and to bring some authenticity into having these talks. I mean, yes, there's some, you know, kind of specific facilitator notes of things to do, but it's most important for any facilitator of these talks to have is that that self-reflection and that ability to tell their stories in ways that help to move people forward.
That internal work with a capital W, self-awareness, really, when you're engaging these conversations and facilitating, I really appreciate kind of the education piece and asking those open-ended questions. It's definitely not a, you know, a checklist there as well, and you'll be great at it too. In terms of folks raising their hand to be kind of these leaders, to be part of the team, and to really think about this as well. Another way that folks can get involved is being in those employee resource groups, being ERG leaders. What role do ERGs play in your inclusion strategy?
Yeah, well, the ERGs, or as we call them, conclusion groups, um, you know, they're the connective tissue of the strategy, and especially as we think about the culture. And culture is simply the way an organization, how we think, what we believe, and how we behave. And the ERGs, or our conclusion groups, are the arms and legs of really helping to shape that culture. So, you know, with our conclusion groups, and we also regard the kind of the umbrella of these employee groups as our communities, you know, they really empower our workforce through creating those connections and their programming and focus areas to help promote greater allyship and supporting professional development and recruitment and retention and volunteerism. And they do this for all employees, not just the members of their groups. And so, you know, the conversation that we've been having is around, you know, highlighting communities leadership as Pinterest leadership. Our leaders are leaders of culture, and that leadership is essential to the growth and health and success of our business. So that's really the role that the ERGs play. And currently we have 10 in the US and 5 globally. And, you know, and they're contributing and supporting, you know, a variety of things that are really helping to move our business forward, to bring in, you know, their unique insights and perspectives to support our products and across our platform, as well as when we talk about culture, you know, thinking about talent and all the things I mentioned, recruitment, retention, development, et cetera. So, you know, we just really are focused on the communities really uplifting and being, again, the arms and legs of the culture that we seek to create, and also kind of the embodiment of our values. And these are places where you can see our values in action.
Yeah, their values manifesting through the action, whether they're written on the kitchen wall or the virtual kitchen wall, and then the action played out of, you know, what is celebrated, what the modeling behavior is for what you were talking about earlier, from executives, from leaders, which is so important, and all of these different pieces, and everyone taking ownership of creating an equitable workplace and really fostering that. Nichole, I feel like I can ask you a bunch more questions, but I know our time is ending together. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring any kind of insights that we have discussed here today?
I guess I'd leave you with just the recognition that, you know, there's no one right way to lead diversity, equity, and inclusion. No one way to get this done. You know, it will require, you know, everyone rolling up their sleeves, you know, taking responsibility as opposed to waiting for someone to tell them what class to take or what group to join, but to actively be engaged in you know, the behaviors that help us to be as inclusive and representative as our pinners are, and as our marketplace is. And the more that we do that, we know that we'll continue to you know, bring that inspiration that will help everyone live a life that they love, and also for our employees to have a career that they love. So again, thank you for the time to talk about DEI, and I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing and for taking the time to be on the show, Nichole. I really appreciated our conversation on reimagining company culture this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.